stock down, and I'll add in some of the guys I have too, because some of them are similar, or some of them are similar type players. We'll talk about Max Duggan. Strong season after he got a chance to play. Senior Bowl didn't go too great. He ran well in general in Indianapolis, but I don't think you have him in the stock up category.
No, I mean, I'm recognizing his athleticism. He ran 4.52, but man, I cringed when I watched his throwing motion at the combine. And I still believe that he can grit his way to victories, but he is not an accurate thrower. I thought the ball was all over the yard on some of the throws that I was able to watch. And
let me interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you, but you made this clear because Danny Cannell asked you about this last week while we were together. You don't care so much about accuracy at the combine, you said, about quarterbacks. Why does this concern you?
Because there was 10 feet above a guy's head. That's a little bit. Okay. It's not like, okay, with the timing, you can tell if the timing's off or if it's just a bit outside my referral to Major League and the wild thing. And I think he fits that category perfectly.
Okay. No, I just wanted to get that clarification because that's a good point that people wouldn't necessarily understand. Let's go to wide receiver. I mentioned this at the top in terms of one of our bets. Both our guys didn't have great combines in terms of athletic numbers. Xavier Hutchinson at Iowa State and my guy Michael Wilson out of Stanford. They're in the same cluster, I would imagine.
Yep.
What gave you pause about Xavier Hutchinson?
Yeah, just the speed was in the 4.5s. He wasn't very explosive in the jumps. That was a lot of question. He caught the ball well enough for me at the combine, although, he had some drops on tape, which we have mentioned earlier in our Just Good Football Player segment. So I was a little disappointed because I didn't think he really jumped out down at the Senior Bowl either. He's just kind of been blending in. And in this time of year, we talk about guys spiraling up or down. And I think he's been kind of here to almost this way instead of going up this way. But the guy I was most disappointed in was Kayshon Boutte from LSU. I mean, everybody talked about this guy being a potential first-round pick going into this season. Inconsistent, lacked effort, in my opinion, too many drops, didn't play hard. So he had to do something to put himself on the map. You remember we talked about he was going to go back to school, then he decided to come out and just poor. He had a 29-inch vertical jump. He, ran 4.5, I believe.
Yep.
Broad jump was not explosive. It was just very, very average workout for a guy that people were talking about as the next great receiver to come out of LSU 2 years ago. And this guy has just really been plummeting ever since last year and through this process.
All right, let's talk about the tight end class because Michael Mayer ran a 4.7. He was lighter than I thought. I think he came in at 249. I thought he was probably 255, maybe even a little bigger. 6'4 and a half, 31 and 5/8 inch arms. I don't know if that's okay for a tight end. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, no, and let's put this into context. This guy is probably the most talented overall tight end in this draft.
I agree.
But okay, he doesn't blow away, and we knew that when we talked about him. He can block well enough. He's extremely talented in contested situation, catches everything. He's just not a freak athlete for the position. When we talked about Washington, that is a freak athlete. This guy's going to be a solid starter in the league. He's going to make a lot of plays. He's not going to stretch the field. It'll be a good short to intermediate. He was just adequate on these test numbers, but this is a guy that's a better football player than an athlete. But I know how some teams think, and when you're trying to stack these tight ends, now Kincaid didn't do anything. The guy that you made really mad, Musgrave, may not ever show up to a pro day again because you just ruined his confidence level and his self-esteem. And I was kind of shocked that came out of you, but to be honest with you,
I crossed the line.
But some teams are going to go like, I got this guy 6'6", 260 that ran 4.6. I understand he's not as good of a football player as Mayer is from Notre Dame. And but because of the athletic test numbers, some teams will say, well, he has such a higher ceiling and more upside than Mayer or Mayer, because I think Mayer is a really good football player, but I also think what you see is what you're going to get. I don't know how much better he will get than what you watched on college tape.
Not a
And
lot
what
of people.
numbers pedestrian, that usually told me that, he's going to be what you see.
All right, I'm gonna ask you a follow up, and not a lot of people know this, but you're a huge lacrosse guy. You have at least one of your sons was a top flight lacrosse
Both,
player.
yeah,
Both sons, and one is a lacrosse coach right now in college,
yeah.
correct?
And high school, he's a head high school lacrosse coach.
Yeah, so you understand that world, and I mentioned that because Musgrave told us he played football. He was I think a downhill, some like ski racer guy, like he was
Yeah.
an athlete there, and he also played lacrosse. So knowing that that background and the athleticism required to play lacrosse in particular, would you take Musgrave over Mayer, knowing what you saw with the numbers that Mayer tested at?
I don't know, because I don't know how good Musgrave is as a blocker. I know Mayer, you're getting the most complete tight end
Okay.
out of this draft class. I think Musgrave's going to be definitely in first round conversations because he tested out well enough, caught the ball well enough. Didn't like that. I didn't like his Senior Bowl, and when I called him Rusty after you made him mad of his mustache, I piled on a little bit, which I probably shouldn't have done. And
if you're watching on YouTube, you can sort of see the pencil thin mustache there.
Yeah.
And just so I can explain quickly, like I was offset talking to someone, I got dragged on set, so I was a little discombobulated. I said Senior Bowl instead of Combine, and I think you corrected me as you have been known to do. And I said, "Sorry, Luke, I was distracted by your mustache. That's why I forgot where we were." And then he basically gave me that look that you're watching there on the screen, where he was at the podium.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're still on the podcast. I thought you and him maybe have a little meeting later in the evening on.
That would be a short meeting.
Yeah.
All right, let's get through some of these other names here before I have to bounce. Why don't you give me an edge rusher that you wish I'd done a little more at the combine?
I talked to Icombe because Central Michigan, I really thought I liked him on tape with the energy and effort, but he really didn't blow me away. Didn't blow me away at the Senior Bowl, so he's kind of leveled off for me. But the guy I was most disappointed in, although you see flashes when you watch his tape, was Mike Morris from Michigan.
Because he looks the part when he gets off the bus, right?
I was 6'5", 275. Now they had an official time of 4.95, but I was sitting with some people that will use the time of 5.04, and one time was even a 5.11, which is atrocious for an edge rusher.
Right.
28-inch vertical jump, which is, not very explosive, 9.2 broad. A little bit of an underachiever on tape, but I thought he, out of any of these edge rushers, hurt himself the most.
Yeah, and I'd heard from teams that they wanted him to play a little harder as well during the fall, so that was a concern. And finally, let's mention Clark Phillips III, the cornerback out of Utah, undersized, but he plays with a chip on his shoulder. Unfortunately, 5'9", 184, 4.51, and 29 and 1/8 inch arms. All those things add up to what for you?
Nickel only. So I know, but then I looked at his shuttle time just because you have to be so quick twitched, and it was a 4.32 on a short shuttle, which is very pedestrian like. You expect a smaller guy to really explode, especially if they're not going to be fast. But he was not fast or as quick twitched in these drills. Now, you see the explosiveness to me on tape, the quickness part of it, and he is a really good football player. But I think he may be pigeonholed now as a Nick only instead of, there was some talk about him being in the mix with some of these top corners. But I think he's going to get pigeonholed a little bit now into a nickel corner only.
Does he stay in day 2, or is this a problem?
Very interesting. It'll be borderline. Because I just think when you went into this process before the Senior Bowl at the end of the season, it's Phillips, and all of a sudden you have Rush, who we talked about from South Carolina. Now Rush at South Carolina goes down and looks. One of the questions I had with his stiffness and was his ability to mirror receivers. Well, he put that myth to rest down there at the Senior Bowl, because he was he was running the route before the receiver run the route.
Every
And then he
time,
blows
too.
away the combine. So I'm asking you this: when you take a rush over a Phillips, even though you may have him graded differently when you saw it in the fall?
100%, 6'2", and we saw what he could do in one-on-one drills, which I know you don't like me to say it, which favors the wide receiver.
No, it
And
doesn't.
the field's wide ass open. You can do whatever you want to do. But I think that's right. And I sound like I'm leaning towards the measurements and what we saw. You see it on tape with Darius, not to the extent you saw with Clark. But the issue is the size. You can't fix that over. He's done growing, I would imagine, and that's a concern when you're talking about taking a guy 50th or talking about taking a guy 100th.